I'm R.A. Schwartz, along with my co-hosts for tonight, Pat Ralph and Rachel Galligan. Welcome to the WNBA Insider Show. Each week we cover different topics important to the W. Using X's and O's along with key stats, we bring honest and critical analysis. Real quick, I'll let Rachel say hi, and then Pat, you're going to dive in and talk to us about New York versus Phoenix.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here again.
Hey, guys. So, we're going to start. We're going to do quick little roundup of what's going on in the league on this. We are recording Tuesday evening and kind of a little bit of a glimpse ahead as to what is coming up this week, other notable games to get you guys caught up and up to date on everything going on in the W. To start, we're going to start first in Westchester County, New York, where Diana Taurasi showed us why she is going back to our GOAT conversation last week, guys, why she might be going down as the greatest scorer in WNBA history. She had one of those classic games tonight, 27 points. She hit 7 threes. At one point, she was 7 of 8 from 3. And Phoenix got back to their winning ways tonight. They snapped that 2-game slide that they were on and really ran the Liberty off the floor, really in the back end of the third quarter, and then through the fourth by a score of 83-69. They got off they were playing well first. They were up 30-16 at the end of the first quarter, but New York rallied really well in the second quarter, and at the start of the third quarter, they cut it to within 5, and it looked like at some point that the Liberty were going to get back in this game and maybe make a run, and it was going to be a close finish, like the game was a couple weeks ago when they played their first game of the season at the Garden. However, though, Phoenix just could not miss tonight. They shot almost 61% from 3 tonight, 48% from the field. It was just one of those breakout offensive games for them when Phoenix gets hot. And then this is on a night where Brittany Griner didn't really play that well offensively. She really wasn't doing anything special. DeWanna Bonner had a really good game. She had 18 points. She hit 4 threes. And it just really for the Liberty, this is another bad defensive game. I know a lot of it was Phoenix shot the ball well and was just Diana Taurasi wasn't missing anything, and they hit 14 threes tonight, and it's hard to win when a team is making 14 threes. But a lot of it had to do with the Liberty were giving them wide open looks. Like there were some looks tonight where they were just pulling right up, or they set a screen and Phoenix would get a wide open shooter, and nobody for the Liberty would be within 5 feet. And tonight was really the first time, and then I'll throw it to you guys to get some reaction and thoughts. But tonight was the first time, or second time, I should say, in as many games that I'm starting to see some verbal and emotional frustration from the Liberty now. They're now 4-9. They've lost 3 in a row. The players seem really frustrated because they just couldn't get a stop tonight against this team. Katie Smith was rolling her eyes at one point in the third quarter. It looked as if she was rolling her eyes at a call that she didn't agree with, but I think that we can all say that it was part of a grander thing, that she's pretty frustrated right now with the way the team is playing. And everybody saw how frustrated this team got on Sunday when they just didn't even show up to play against the Sparks. This team, it's getting late early. I tweeted that earlier tonight. I think that it's getting this season is starting to slip away quickly from the Liberty, and tonight was just not a good performance at all from them defensively.
Yeah, I peeked in on the game a few times, and I checked in, at the end of the first, and I was like, oh, this game's gone. And then I checked in right around the beginning of the third, and it was a 2-point game at the 9:07 mark with Tina Charles making a shot and pulling it close. They just ran away. And we've talked about this a lot, Rachel and Pat. When Bonner's going, and I know there's a lot of attention, but Bonner is the key to this team's movement. And the stats are just, Brittany Griner led in rebounds right now, but 0 offensive rebounds. And that's something that Bonner really brings to the court. I mean, she only had 1 offensive rebound, so tonight isn't the greatest example with 5 total rebounds, but 5 assists. I mean, she's feeding the ball. She's getting the ball. What can't she do, Rachel?
Well, that's the thing about Bonner is she can do a little bit of everything. She shot the ball extremely well, 4 for 6 from the 3-point line tonight. I mean, that's incredible, just like a team stat, let alone, someone of her caliber shooting it well above 65% beyond the 3-point line. So, she is just that catalyst to this team. When she's going, they go. We've called her X Factor, I think, 87 times. And she is. I mean, she's just she's this hybrid player that can do a little bit of everything, offensively, defensively, with her length. Everything that she brings to the table is just, it's so valuable. I mean, we could have a whole podcast just on DeWanna Bonner. So, kind of my takes, just kind of to expand from Bonner from the game. I've seen the Liberty play live now a couple of times, and I'm a little bit like kind of perplexed with them a little bit because I but not too much, because we all felt like when we were talking about the preseason and the rankings and where we thought everybody was going to fall, the Liberty were in the discussion as one of those teams we felt like could really struggle at moments. I even had them as kind of one of the lower teams in the league, and it's not even necessarily because of talent. I think it's just a matter of the complete, newness to the table for them. But there's no question there's talent on the team. There's no question that they've got the tools to win games. They've proven it. But what a common theme here is just kind of digging themselves a hole. Not every game, but several games where they come out from the jump and like this one in particular against the Mercury, they dig themselves a 14-point hole after the first quarter. I mean, that's no way to start the game. Right. You've got to find a way to get yourself up and get yourself going. You can't allow Phoenix to come out and drop 30 on you in the first quarter, and you've got to get yourself going offensively. And then the same thing, they get going a little bit in the second quarter, kind of make up that lead a little bit, going into halftime feeling with a little bit of momentum, and then you come out in the third quarter and you just get dominated 23-11 in the third quarter alone. So it's like, for me in Liberty, it's almost like, from a coaching standpoint, getting yourself up and going, whether it's from the start of the game, whether it's after halftime. And it alarms me a little bit to hear you talking about, actually a lot, kind of the body language things that you're seeing. Hopefully It's nothing too serious. But you start seeing teams turn on each other, start getting chippy, people roll on their eyes. Those are things to really be aware of when you're watching these teams that might be in maybe a little bit of a slump or a little bit of a lull. Every team is going to have them this season. Every team from top to bottom. Look at the Lynx. Look at every team that we're covering are going to have high points and low points, and be aware of just kind of the body language. So I thought that was really interesting when you brought that up.
Something that stood out to me, and obviously something that's curious to me, obviously, is the Liberty, their style of playing, things like that. But more so, what I wanted to talk about right now is Brittney Griner. If you look at the stat lines, the key stats, if you will, 12 points, 9 rebounds, 4 for 10 on the field goals, 4 for 4 from the charity stripe. But what sticks out is those 6 blocks. In some ways, you can call it a victory when you hold her to 12 points. In 35 minutes, Brittney Griner only scoring 12 points is a success for the defense. But can you just talk about it? I mean, it's almost
it's ridiculous.
Give me, I don't even know what to say. Like, what?
That's the thing they were talking about tonight on the broadcast. It was the team was saying, it's like, if you look at it from the Liberty's perspective, I mean, in that third quarter, I mean, Griner still only had like 6 points. She had a good fourth quarter. She scored half. I'm pretty sure she scored half, or at least a third of her points there in the final period. From the Liberty's perspective, it's like, this was a DT show tonight, along with DeWanna Bonner. I mean, this is a night they got Griner on a night where she was not like she was playing the other night in Chicago, where she was just, had a double-double and was just dominating until she, knocked Steph Dolson out and was out of the game. But, tonight was a night that, like, you had a great opportunity here. Like, oh, Griner's not playing well or not playing great. But you could it was like somebody said it best tonight on Twitter. I forget who it was, but somebody said best. Tonight was a game that, Diana Taurasi was just not going to let Phoenix lose 3 in a row. And she just took that game from the start, took the Liberty by the neck and just stomped on them. And as you guys mentioned, I mean, just the Liberty, you make a great point, Rachel. They get off to some awful starts, slow starts where they're inconsistent on both ends of the floor. Like, a lot of times they get off the slow starts, and opponents they're playing against also get off the slow starts, and they can't take advantage of that. That happened on Friday, last Friday against Vegas, and then Sunday they just didn't even show up to play against the Sparks. But I'm starting to see a lot of frustration. I'm just seeing a lot of that, and they're an incredibly frustrating team. You said perplexing. That's a great way to put it, because it's a very frustrating team to watch, because on paper they should be better, but you see it on the court and just something just does not seem to be fitting. But and Phoenix again continues. It's just I'm actually writing something tonight for the site tomorrow, which should go up, about pretty much why Phoenix has been so good this year. Like, why are they playing so well? Why they've won 9 of their last 11 games. And you guys have alluded to it, DeWanna Bonner, and the fact that she can do a little bit of everything, and they've got defense. They're playing better defense now. This is a good Phoenix team, and they're a title contender.
So one thing I want to say before we move on to Rachel kind of opening our eyes to the Lynx Seattle game is something that's definitely going to be a topic on an upcoming podcast. So Rachel, Pat, we're definitely going to have to speak about this. What it's like for the Liberty, as far as this is a team that, again, for the past 4 years, playoff contention, top 4 seed going into the playoffs, have really struggled when getting to the playoffs. But, when we're talking about rebuilding teams, Indiana accepted that role. You saw that in offseason moves. Chicago has accepted that role in some regards. And there's been a couple other teams. Atlanta has accepted that role in some regards. I've always felt that going into this season, New York did not accept that role and was not willing to accept that role. And now the harsh reality has come true that they are in a rebuilding sort of season. And I think it's hard when you're talking about the mentality of the players to keep that face on when you're a team that's so used to being at that upper echelon, and now you're hanging out with I don't even want to call it playoff bubble teams. You're hanging out with teams that most likely aren't going to make the playoffs. Rachel, moving forward, Lynx Seattle, Maya Moore, Sylvia Fowles, just domination. Talk to me.
I hate to tell you.
Rachel, your tweet was perfect.
I had to throw that out there, right? It was timed perfectly. Yeah. I'm glad I like to call myself Nostradamus. No, I'm kidding. But honestly, and I have not been worried about Minnesota from the jump, because they have greatness. They've proven that. And it goes back to my previous point, and I even alluded to it in my article about teams hitting lulls and peaks at different points of the season. And I think it's really interesting with Minnesota. I mean, they come out tonight, and against the Seattle team, this was kind of, in my opinion, one of the biggest games kind of on the slate, just to kind of, it was going to tell us a lot about Minnesota and where they're currently at. Coming in on a 4-game winning streak. Okay, that's great. But now you're playing Seattle, who is like right up there at the top of the league. So this was a very revealing game being played at Minnesota. And I mean, they were dominant. I mean, they started out just, after the first quarter, it was 25-14. Seattle kind of had a slower jump, and it was, right around the same margin at halftime. Same thing, third quarter came out hot, outscored Seattle 27-21 in the third quarter. And really, I mean, they were kind of in charge they kind of controlled the entire game. And I can't say enough about the play of Maya Moore and Sylvia Fowles. I mean, there was, even a couple weeks ago, some banter going around of, man, like, what's up with Maya Moore? What's up with Maya Moore? She's only averaging like 19 a game, which sounds ridiculous to say, but I mean, she has now, I think what she has done here these last, week and a half, couple weeks, is just kicked it into that extra Maya Moore gear that no one else has. She finished with 32 tonight, and 7 rebounds. Sylvia Fowles, a dominant performance, 28 points and 17 rebounds. I mean, just those two alone, I mean, I could go down the rest of the stat sheet, but like there's really no point. I mean, those two alone were so dominant, and so they could not be stopped. I mean, it was fun to watch because you just saw the greatness in those two alone, and you saw Minnesota just completely in control of that game. One thing I was really looking at, which is interesting here, I was kind of breaking down offensively and defensively some of the numbers that the Lynx have been putting up just through the course of this season. If you remember, their first 9 games, there was that 4-game losing streak in there and kind of a few wins here and there, and it was kind of a hodgepodge, and this is when everyone's kind of freaking out about what's going on. Offensively, they were scoring 77.5 points a game in that period of time. In these last 5 games alone, they've doubled that, or not doubled that, they've upped that average by 10 points. So they're now averaging 87.5 points a game. just in these last 5 games. So their offensive production has, gone through the roof by a complete margin of 10 points. Defensively, from those first 9 versus these last 5, they're holding their opponents to 5 less points than what they were holding them before. So they were giving up around 80.5 points a game. Now they're just giving up about 75.5 points a game. So you're seeing kind of they've really stepped everything up offensively, defensively, especially offensively. And I think a lot of that goes to Maya Moore, and Sylvia Fowles doing what she's doing right now. But if you remember there was that week, and we kind of talked about that, where they had lost, I think, on the road to Connecticut, and they had about a very rare week off where they could get back. And I think Coach Reeve called it like a mini training camp. And they got back to the basics, and they kind of worked on the things that they needed to work on and themselves, and getting back to what they do. And ever since that period of time, they've been on that 5-game winning streak. They're beating their opponents by an average of 12 points a game. And it's not just, slight margins. I mean, they're putting out some dominant performances right now. And really, we should not be surprised about this. I mean, this is the Minnesota Lynx we're talking about here. So if you really thought they were just going to roll over and this just be a complete wash of a season, I mean, I hate to tell it to you, but I'll call you crazy. And I think tonight is kind of that statement game. That's not to say they're going to go undefeated the rest of the season or anything crazy like that, but I think it shows like, okay, like they've got greatness on that team. They're playing with confidence right now. They've had some time to kind of get this roster. Zandalacini stepping up, doing some things. They're playing at a very high level right now, and they showed it tonight against Seattle.
I can't argue with that. I mean, a lot of people might point to, and we talked about this, I believe, Rachel, or we almost talked about it in our last episode about, players really stepping up. Last time we were talking about it with Liz Cambage, players stepping up on a losing team and how effective that is and how ineffective that is. Many people might point to Stewie and say 27 points, 3 for 3, 10 for 14, pulling down 6 rebounds, filling up the stat sheet in many ways. But the thing is, in that people need to keep in mind, is that's a great stat fluffer for Stewie, but that doesn't mean so much. When the Lynx have that domination going on, they can kind of say, okay, let Stewie do her thing. That's totally fine. I mean, none of the other big name players really, Canada scored 13, but you got 6 points from Howard, 9 from Bird, and 5 from Lloyd. That's not Seattle Storm basketball. When they're playing like that, and Stewie's the only one carrying the team, as amazing as she is, that's not going to get you wins against the LA Sparks or the Minnesota Lynx. I was slightly shocked about this. I know it's a different type of makeup, Minnesota versus LA, but because there's been certain teams that have just, Seattle, Connecticut, and Dallas have had such great games against top talent like LA that I kind of, in my mind, trick myself into thinking that they're going to be putting up, big games like that against Minnesota, and it just hasn't been so far.
Rachel, from watching the Lynx, and it's just I watched that game Friday night, that really kind of a statement win they had on the road against Phoenix. And then seeing it tonight, it seems like it feels like a key part. I know you alluded to this a little bit, was it feels like the bench players and some of their role players are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable and starting to kind of get into more of a routine. And there seems to be a little more of a rotation and stuff, and just more confidence. Is that something that you've seen too so far over this 5-game win streak?
Absolutely. And I think it really kind of primarily, in my opinion, comes down to Zandalacini. And I think she's playing at a different level. Is she at her maximum potential? No. We're going to continue to see what Zandalacini can do. And I think Coach Reeve is kind of loosening the reins a little bit more on her when it comes to minutes, her trustworthiness with her, and kind of letting her play more. We've seen her minutes steadily increase in just the course of these last couple of weeks. She's a proven scorer. She can score. She can fill it up. She put up 7 tonight. Just went 3 for 4. Did what she did. Came in off the bench. Was that spark. Gave them some great minutes. And I think that, not that the bench is deep. No one is saying that. We know that that's not the case with the Lynx. But if you have that one person that kind of can come in that is playing a greater role than maybe what was happening earlier in the season, that can make that much of a difference. I did want to bring up one point too. I think right now what the Lynx are doing on the boards, especially in this game in particular, was a difference maker. They've really been dominant on the glass. And even in a game like tonight where, you've got Breanna Stewart, who's just playing out of her mind right now. I mean, she's incredible, one of the best players, if not the best player in the league right now. But, they were dominant on the glass. They out-rebounded Seattle 42-28, 11 offensive rebounds. I mean, they just didn't have an answer inside for especially fouls, 5 offensive rebounds and the second chance points that leads to. That's you're not going to win that game more times than not. And I think when it came to Seattle, you can't have Jewel Lloyd going 2 for 11. Especially there's got to be someone else. That stat line's got to be 6 for 11. She's too key of a factor in what they're doing offensively to do that. I'm not saying that's the reason they lost the game, but that hurts tremendously. That just puts that much more stress on Stewie or someone else to kind of step up. But back to your point, I just wanted to throw that in there. I think that the bench production from the Lynx and Xander Lassini really is kind of what I'm talking about, has made a big time difference. And I think we'll continue to see her minutes improve and or really go up, and she'll continue to be even greater of a factor as she gets more confidence.
And I think it's a very wise opinion to point to a lot of the success about the comfort of Xander Lassini and her play, because I've been on the Zandy hype train for a while. Speaking of top teams, really good games, DC and Connecticut played today. Arguably, their last game was the best game of the season so far, where DC had that 30-point lead. Connecticut rushes back, takes a lead late, ends up losing by 5, I believe, just because of a ridiculous game by Elena Deladon, just putting the team on her back. I was there live, and I got to say it was really a game of quarters. And I hate breaking it down to quarters, but the first quarter, Washington was just dominated. I talked to Pat about this earlier, right after the game we were texting. Washington, at the end of the first quarter, had 4 total points, all right? 4 total paint points and second chance points combined. To me, that's not going to work. You need a paint presence. LaToya Sanders needed to step it up. And a lot of that had to do with Shanae just dominating down low. And I mean, I was blown away. I got to say this off the bat, because I know I'm much more of a Jonquel fan than the Shanae fan. And I think as far as the setup of this team for the long-term growth of this team, or at least currently, I think as much better that, Shanae has been playing this season, I still personally would take JJ over her. But Shanae's paint presence and the way that, she's getting double teamed and she's reaching her hand between 2 players, bending on 1 foot, doing some crazy yoga move and flipping the ball up to make a layup. And it was mind-blowing, her ability to do that. Defensively, I really saw a lot of a struggle from Connecticut. It was much less of Connecticut imposing good defense on Washington that caused them to lose. But going back to the quarters, in the second and third quarter, they just got handed the game, Connecticut did. Washington 28-21 in the second, and then 33-15 in the third. There was a huge, I think, 5-minute or 4-minute streak where they just couldn't score. And that's not Connecticut basketball. Connecticut lost the rebounding lead that they had that really took them to that next level. Rachel, I know you focused and you pay a lot of attention to Connecticut. Talk to me about Connecticut's struggle right now.
So what I feel like is happening, we're seeing a little bit of inconsistencies, especially when it comes down to, I guess, shooting the ball. Just being consistency beyond the 3-point line, having that inside presence, which you alluded to. But for me, I think the biggest factor in kind of all of this, we're seeing, you still have Alyssa Thomas who's out and she's injured. And that is a big factor into this. I mean, that's a big part of their offense. That's 12 points a game. She's averaging 31 minutes a game. So with her out, that completely changes the dynamic of everything they're trying to do. With this great run, headed into kind of what they were doing. They started out super hot. And then they face the injuries. Thomas goes out with that shoulder. They go on that really tough road swing where nobody got any sleep. Everybody's exhausted. It was difficult. And so now I think with Thomas out, the team's a little bit off kilter, a little bit out of whack. And for me, from what I'm seeing so far, I was able to catch some of the game tonight. I just didn't see enough flow offensively. I thought shot selection was a little bit more choppy than usual, and they're not shooting the ball well from the perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, just to speak on that, Shakina Strickland, 1 for 5 from 3. They shot 33%, and it's not to say that they can't shoot. I mean, they're a team that can definitely shoot. I did notice in warmups, not that this means much, but they were struggling to make the deep ball in warmups. But Shakina got an early bucket. I mean, she went 1 for 7 on field goals, 1 for 5 from 3-pointers. I mean, it was bad. They were just blatantly missing shots, and it looked forced at certain points. They weren't setting up for good shots.
And I think another thing too is that, which is very uncharacteristic of Connecticut, is they had 17 turnovers tonight. Not a team that turns the ball over, pretty disciplined, and not a team that's you're finding with that high of a number. So it's really just, again, it goes to that consistency. Again, not having Alyssa Thomas, I mean, that can't be said enough, because she really is kind of like that MVP for them, who can do, like we were saying with DeWanna Bonner earlier, a little bit of everything. And, the question now becomes, which is interesting, is what we're seeing now in Connecticut. Is this just a blip on the radar, or a rough road trip where they've lost 4 out of 5 and they just need to get some home cooking and back in those home beds? Or is this just are they regressing to the mean? And that start we saw was just a hot start. We're going to see over the next couple of weeks to see what unfolds. But this definitely has, I think, tempered any of our expectations with Connecticut, because I know we were all jumping for joy when with that start, just expecting that they could be in the finals. And now I think everyone's cooled down a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see, because it's been a season of runs for them so far.
Yeah, let me add something real quick. I think, we're talking about offensively and them shooting the ball, whatever. I'm looking at the stats here. Okay, 33% beyond the 3-point line. It's really not bad. So I might be a little bit harsh with that. I think what we're seeing, especially probably in these last 6 games, look back at defensively the numbers they're giving up. Started out with the Seattle Storm. They give up. Well, actually, we could even go back before that. That game versus the Mystics, where Deladon threw everyone on her back, they gave up 95, and then they turn around, they play Seattle, give up 103. Then they go to Phoenix and give up 89. Okay, then you go to Atlanta and give up 75. Atlanta's not going to score a ton of points. Okay, the Fever, no offense. Okay, they score 78, and then you turn around again tonight, and the Mystics give up 92. Now, there's some high octane offenses in there. There's no doubt about it. But defensively, you've got to find a way to slow them down. These are numbers that weren't necessarily like this high earlier on in the season. Defensively, they were holding teams to 65, 77, 72.
Well, Rachel, answer me this. Their scoring has also dipped. Do you see it more? I know you're kind of hinting on this, but I just want to I want to put you on spot and make a definitive statement. Are you seeing more? Because, they were averaging like 92 a game early on in the season. They were, I think, like their first 4 games, they scored 100 or something ridiculous like that. Do you think that it's a happenstance of their scoring has tapered off, or is their defense getting weaker?
I think a lot of coaches would tell you, hey, your offense is going to be fueled by your defense. That's a tough one for me, because Connecticut is such a high octane offensive team, where it could be the flip side. So if you're making a definitive statement about that, just kind of glancing at these numbers right now, I'm always going to err on the side of defense. When you're getting stops and you're defending, you're making people shoot tough contested shots or turning people over, not turning it over yourself. That's going to fuel your offense. So I feel like that the issue is lying on the defensive end of the floor, and that is just my humble opinion.
I appreciate you actually giving an answer. A lot of people try and sidestep it. Moving on to what some are dubbing the most physical WNBA game in years. Dallas and LA are playing right now. It's a 5-point game with under 3 minutes left in the half.
We gotta wrap this up.
40, 35. We gotta wrap this up real quick. Dallas is dominating, and we've talked about this. Rachel, we thought we knew that both teams would be coming out to fire. NECA doesn't get to play this game due to some back issues. What do you think is going to happen when this Sparks team is missing NECA Agumake, just in general?
Oh, that's huge. I don't know. She's so valuable to them offensively, defensively, even as a leader on the floor with the energy that she brings. So that's a major blow, one that I think a lot of us were kind of shocked to see. It's going to be a blow, but at the same time, this is a well-coached team, a veteran team, still with some young players who are able to step up. They're extremely talented. So I think this is going to be a close game. It's going to come down to the wire, but it's a team that I know LA, they're not afraid of, but that's one they look at on their schedule, and it's like, man, that's going to be a tough one because it poses some serious matchup problems, and it poses even more matchup problems now with Nneka out.
Yeah, let's see how they run from it. Pat, I want a few thoughts from you real quick because then I want to ask you both 3 rapid-fire questions. Go, Pat.
Absolutely. So I think this is really interesting tonight because, obviously we saw what happened last week. Dallas just ran them off the court on their home floor on Friday. Just a really uncharacteristic performance from the Sparks to just go on the road and just lay an egg. So I really thought tonight, I figured, okay, Sparks are going to come out. They're going to be ready to play. They pounded the Liberty on Sunday, and I figured they don't want to get embarrassed twice in 1 week, let alone lose twice in 1 week to Dallas. I figured tonight they're going to come out, ready to play. But then you mentioned the big thing, the big development, have no Nneka Ogwumike, with the back injury out day to day, and we're seeing, right now it's a 4-point game here. Dallas has played well on the road. And that's what you've got to do with the Sparks. You've got to come out and play well because the Sparks play so well at home. They can just run away from you early and stuff and hide like they did on Sunday to the Liberty. So, I mean, as when Nneka is not in there, it makes a world of a difference because she can do a little bit of everything. She can defend, she can facilitate, she can shoot, she can play down low on the block. She can rebound. There's a reason why she was MVP 2 years ago, and there's a reason why there's some who think she should be MVP again this year and why she's one of the most efficient players in the league. So, and she's one of the best players in the league. So I really, the loss of her, not having her in the lineup it's tough. And she's just, she can't be, she's an irreplaceable player.
All right, real quick, rapid fire so we can all get out of here and watch this game. Rachel, you first, then Pat. Dream versus Sky. Who wins? Go.
Sky.
Pat?
Sky. It's a camp day, baby, at home. Let's go. The kids are going to be going nuts.
All right. Next game on the docket tomorrow, Connecticut versus Fever. Sun versus Fever. Rachel, go.
Ooh, yeah, I mean, it's going to be the Sun.
Pat?
Is that game in Indiana or home in Connecticut?
I believe it's in Connecticut.
Give me the Sun on the back-to-back.
All right. And then the last game on the docket tomorrow, Dallas Wings on a back-to-back, taking on the Aces in Las Vegas. Pat, you first.
Hot take. Let's see. Asia Wilson, double-double against Liz Cambage. Aces pull off the upset.
Rachel?
Wilson will play great, but Wings are going to win.
Ooh, the Wings have some consistency in Rachel's eyes? You heard it here first.
Possibly.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much to my co-hosts, Pat Ralph and Rachel Galligan. I'm R.A. Schwartz. This has been the WNBA Insider Show. Tune in because we got you covered on anything you need, WNBA.